Good afternoon. My name is Sam Jahari, and welcome to Briona's Legacy. Today we have with us here on allpointstv.com. Today we have Scott Masi with us from Brighton Hospital in Brighton,
In Brighton, yeah.
in St. Joe's. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam.
Glad to have you with us today, Scott. Our program, we deal with more of the schools and what's happening with all these people losing their lives to overdoses of especially like heroin and depression and stuff like this. And so a couple of weeks ago we lost a kid from the Linden area. And last week I seen on my Facebook page we lost like three people in the Waterford area within a week. Every time I read something and they say, heroin is making a comeback. Did heroin ever go away?
It's just morphed itself into different things. I mean, because really when you look at it, we have this epidemic. We coin it as an epidemic. It is an epidemic. But when you look at it, it's prescription medication that morphs itself into the heroin issue. That's why things have changed so dramatically recently, because the availability of prescriptions, and then how the whole aspect of how doctors prescribe, the availability, the risk perception amongst our youth. So it's almost like a perfect storm that they're experiencing. And our kids, during this formidable time in their life, are experimenting, and then boom, I can't tell you, within the inpatient setting, at Brighton, for example, I do a didactic, which is like what we call a tech talk, and I talk about emerging trends, and it's great because we have a cross section of demographics, but the majority of the patients that are in there are 18 to 25-year-old heroin addicts, and they have progressed in their disease so quickly that they're putting a needle in their arm. Okay, now I know when I was struggling with my addiction, it was just a little less than a decade ago, 8-10 years ago. Things have changed so dramatically. The potency, you can snort heroin now, you can smoke it. So the way it's ingested is so much different. Back in the 80s, 90s, I mean, the only way you could do it was because of the purity was injecting. So these kids, I mean, they're experiencing this so quickly, and it comes on to them so quickly, and just see these kids, 18 to 25-year-olds, that, and the gateway was prescription medication.
They were talking about on the news about these people that played for the NHL and for that played for football, and they're all suing the football league, and they're suing the NHL because some of these, they were the enforcers or whatever, it's from being hit and taking these hits, they were just giving them prescription drugs or pain medications like it's going out of style. The one father, he was coming on, he says, they gave my son, I can't remember exactly, but it was too much. I mean, for like 1 month of pain medication, that this guy ended up taking his life. Another one, he ended up overdosing, and all these things that's happening. This isn't just happening in our youth. It's happening in our society. Where people get hurt, whether they go to the dentist and they get their tooth pulled, or just back pain, or this, or whatever happens, in a car accident, that you go in and the doctor is giving you a prescription, for 90 Vicodins for a month, if not more, that is just crazy. And then what I find in our society, that these people get addicted to what the doctor is giving them, then the doctor turns their back on them. Oh, you're an addict.
Well, I just picked up a 54-year-old woman from rural Ohio for treatment, and her doctor, after 20 years, had just quit her. He didn't know how to handle her. For 20 years, he was medicating her. He was writing prescriptions not only for opiates, but he was writing them for benzodiazepines. So she was dealing with, behavioral issues, pain issues, psychiatric issues, and she was just so heavily medicated. But then the doctor, when you talk about prescription medication, you're only talking about masking a symptom. You're not talking about curing anything. But the thing is, when's the last time you were prescribed something and there was a conversation with your doctor about what the plan was? Because our bodies are going to build up tolerance to prescription medication.
Exactly.
For example, when we talk about the demographics, the different demographics, I mean, I talk about the 18 to 25-year-old population, but a huge emerging trend amongst abuse is amongst our elderly now, because by the year 2020, the population over the age of 60, our baby boomers are aging, is going to double. It's going to double within the next 5 years, the people over the age of 60. Now, when you look at the people over the age of 60, they average 2 to 4 different medications. Okay, so their average, they have easier access to the doctors, they're getting higher potency drugs. Now, their metabolism, as you age, your metabolism slows down. So these drugs that they're on are now mixing within their system. They're not, they're not, for lack of a better word, they're not dissolving within their system. The blood flow to their organs work slower. So when you hear about a family member that's fallen down and breaking a hip, how many times have you heard about, elderly people breaking their hips, arms, accidents at home? You have to look at how they're being medicated.
Exactly. It's a few months back I seen something on Facebook, and it was a man that was wearing a shirt, and it said, I started on, something for cholesterol. And from the cholesterol, he ended up with anxiety. And from the anxiety, he ended up with, high blood pressure. And from the high blood pressure, he ended up with something else. Well, it started with that one pill for cholesterol, and all of a sudden, he's on 7 different medications. Now, his symptoms was, for cholesterol. Now he's got 7 different other symptoms. And like you said, we're not trying to cure anybody.
No.
We just want to keep people medicated, because that's where the money is, and they don't give a shit about you.
I was at the doctor yesterday. I mean, I got a great doctor. I enjoyed I got to wait a while in the waiting room, but it's because he's spending time with his patients. But it was interesting yesterday because I watched as 3 drug reps just walked right in. Just it was just they didn't even sit down. They went right into the and that's these drug reps have this relationship with our doctors, and they're just providing medication, and 80% of the time when you come out of a doctor's office, 80% of the time you're coming out with a prescription.
Oh, exactly. Well, I mean, within the first couple of minutes you talk to your doctor, he's already writing you up a prescription. See how this how this works for you for a week. If it doesn't work, you come back and see me. After I lost my child, I was in a world of depression. I hurt from head to toe. It was hard for me to get out of bed. My wife, bless her heart, she's like, you need to go see somebody. And I talked to the therapist for a couple months, and from that couple months, she says, Sam, I really think that you need to sleep. You need to see the psychiatrist and let him prescribe you something. And I at that time, I told her I didn't want really any medication. She says, you get something that non-habit forming or whatever. But within 4 months talking to the psychiatrist, I was on 5 different medications. One to go to sleep, one to wake up, one to make me happy, one to this. But did it really take away what I was feeling, the depression? Did it take it away? No, it did not. Sometimes we have to feel. And the only way you can get over something is by feeling and working it out. We think that there's a pill for everything that's going to solve our problems. And in the long run, what I'm finding is this just causes more problems for us. And like I told this doctor after, the 4th month, I said, you know what, doc? I'm still depressed. I lost my child. He said, well, I don't know why you come to see me, So I don't know why I come to see you, but I know I'm not coming back. I left him the prescriptions on his table and I walked out and never went back. Do I feel depression every now and then? Yes, I do. That's just normal. Things aren't always going to go your way. I just lost my father last month. Does it hurt? Hell yeah, it hurts. But that's just life. And life is going to kick you and throw you down and knock you out. But the whole thing is we have to get up. Sometimes you just got to lay down there for a while. But we have to get up. And there's nothing, no pill in the world is going to solve it for us. We have to feel. That's just part of life.
Well, yeah, and I mean, just along those lines, think about it. The United States makes up 4.6% of the world's population. Okay. We consume 99% of the world's Vicodin, which is hydrocodone. We consume 80% of the world's opiates, which are pain medications. All I got to say is, what the hell is the difference between our society and like Eastern culture? I mean, the way we treat our our health care. I mean, if you look at, for example, there's a book called the DSM. Yeah, the DSM is a Diagnostic Statistical Manual. It's used since 1952 for our doctors. It's basically the recipe book. You go to the doctor, you start talking to them, they identify some symptoms, they take the symptoms, and then they give you a diagnosis. And that's what this DSM book is. And now we are on the fifth iteration of the book. Since 1952, the book, it was the first revision was 17 years between the first and the second. The time frame between revisions has collapsed. This last revision was less than 5 years. The book gets thicker and thicker and thicker. We have a diagnosis for everything in this country. We have a diagnosis for everything. Exactly. We don't have the ability, to really self-evaluate our own issues and deal with everyday life.
Well, that's it. My daughter, after she lost her mom, I always had her going to therapy and stuff, but all of a sudden, first, when she was like in the 4th or 5th grade, they want to say, oh, she's ADD. I would never medicate her. In 6th, 7th grade, now, oh, she's ADHD. Again, I would not medicate. And the whole thing is like what I found was teachers and counselors, they were the ones that were really diagnosing. They were the ones that, they wanted to put your kid on Ritalin or something, It's like, stay within what you know, and that's teaching, can you diagnose somebody? But, after my daughter died, her mom passed away and stuff, of course she's hurting and stuff. At this point, my daughter gets diagnosed with bipolar. And, at this point, it was like, as a parent, you want to do what's best for your children, and sometimes you're uneducated in that field. So you think that these professionals, they know better, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to get her medicated, and really that was the first of the domino effect with my daughter. I look back on it now, and afterwards, of course, after I lost her, I went to a couple of the programs you had, and stuff like that, which I learned more about the addiction and how we're getting to this point. 80% of all heroin users, they start with pain medication that's given from the doctor. And you told me once before, you said we have all these doctors, 3 million?
We have 1 million, we have 960,000 doctors in this country, okay? We have less than 2,500 doctors that are meet ASAM criteria, which is the American Society of Addiction Medicine. So we only have 20, and you're talking about 20% of our population in this country is either in recovery or in active addiction. 20% of this country.
Why is that? Why isn't there more doctors?
We don't have these specialized doctors for addiction medicine.
Why is it? Because there's not much money in that field, or
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, the basic, what I've found is that the training isn't there. For example, I work in a large health system, the largest health system in southeastern Michigan. We have the largest residency program. The residency program is for doctors after they go to school. Part of their residency is to be assigned to a program in a hospital and get the real life experience. Well, part of being part of that large health system, we are the addiction or the behavioral health arm of the hospital. I don't see any of the residents coming through our programs to get any experience in addiction medicine. So it's the education piece. It's not being pushed, to expose that. But from a federal government standpoint, there are fellowships that are really starting to sprout now. So the last 2 years, there's been 10 programs throughout the nation, 10 each year that have been developed for residents, for these young doctors to get their training.
as far as our federal government, are they stepping up to get with these doctors, to slow down on
Yes,
the way they write their prescriptions and stuff like that?
From a whole bunch of different standpoints, it's kind of like a double-edged sword because, for example, we were doing a real good. We identified. We all kind of said, look, we got a problem here. This addiction, mostly to heroin, to prescription medication. We have a problem here. So most recently, the DEA and the federal government, we rescheduled hydrocodone. We rescheduled it from a 3 to a 2. So to understand the rescheduling, 1 is an illicit drug. 2 is highly addictive but the way they schedule is based on addiction of the medication, or if it has a medical property. So things like right now, you have Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So with Vicodin being a 3, now a 2, a doctor can't prescribe your refills. Okay, plus you have to come in and see the doctor to get the refill. So, but like I say, it's a double-edged sword. So now what the doctors are doing is they can prescribe up to 90 pills. So you're walking out with 90 pills. Plus, like Medicaid is pushing mostly our elderly to do the mail order prescriptions. So they're getting their prescriptions through the mail, and they're asked to to fill those at the higher rates. So the drugs, the prescription drugs that are out there, I don't have the number to tell you, but it's ridiculous if you looked at the number of prescriptions. We prescribe enough painkillers in this country. Okay, this just came out by the CDC, 2012, that we prescribe enough painkillers in this country to medicate every person over the age of 12, 24/7 for 30 days.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. It's just,
crazy.
And the thing is, you look at, when I say a double-edged sword, so we're doing a good job kind of rescheduling Vicodin. We're really policing the doctors a lot better. A lot of doctors now have been, been brought up on charges, for their prescribing patterns. But then what happened? So this was the first year, this recent year, where deaths due to prescription medication, specifically RX medication pain relievers, it leveled off. It didn't fall. It leveled off at 16,500 people died every year from prescription medication painkillers. That's roughly 45 people a day.
How about heroin? Did that go
Okay,
up?
so so exactly. What happened to heroin?
Yeah,
Heroin
exactly.
went up almost 100%, the deaths attributed to it. So we addressed it in one issue, and then boom, it floats out to the other aspects. So it's tough, but things are going to get worse before they get better. And you compound it by our youth and what they're exposed to. The risk perception amongst our youth is at the lowest it's ever been as far as the way they look at the risk of using drugs. And they're exposed. If you look at our culture, we're probably at the most liberal time in our culture when it comes to the way we view drugs. And there's what's called a generational forgetting, which, to understand generational forgetting, it's like, like a parent saying, well, at least he's not doing heroin. Well, and he's only smoking pot. Throw everything you know about pot out the window, okay? There is nothing from my generation that remotely is close to what we're seeing with marijuana today, okay? I can tell you, and that's what these kids are being exposed to. Just in the last 2 years, marijuana, the potency of marijuana has almost tripled. Well, more than tripled. On average in this nation, we see potency of the THC at around 11%. In Colorado, in the recreational states, it's upwards of over 34%. Then we're not even talking about the concentrates. So our kids are being exposed to this at young ages during the most formidable time in their life when their brain is developing. And we don't even have hard evidence to understand what they're experiencing and how it's going to affect them long term.
Our brain is developing till the age of 25, and when we use drugs and alcohol, that slows that process down. A lot of times, if you see addicts, that started 13 or 14 years old, you see that's about how much growth their brain got, and they're kind of stuck at that 13, 14 when they started using the drugs and alcohol. So it's very important to know that our brain is developing till the age of 25. So
yeah, depending on what report you read, into our 30s. But the interesting aspect about that, when we talk from a prevention standpoint, being in the treatment field and prevention field, we talk about delaying onset of first use. So if you are introduced to alcohol or drugs of abuse into your 20s, you have a better disposition of not being addicted, okay? So, we know that, try to, delay onset of first use. But we only talk about it from regards associated with illicit drugs and alcohol. We don't talk about it from a standpoint of prescription medication. And if you look at prescription medication and what's going on with our children, not our adolescents, not our teenagers, our children. I'm a Ritalin child. I was put on Ritalin in 2nd grade. And you're talking about the brain development and what these prescriptions
Sure.
do. You talk about, your daughter and the teachers. My daughter was in 2nd grade and witnessed, her parents, just getting a divorce, my drug use around my children, the violence that was in the household, between their mother and I. We had 3 domestic violences. We had the police at the house, over 17 times within a year and a half. Now, during this divorce, my daughters are now in a new school district. They're, meeting new friends. They're put into, a new classroom. Well, this teacher came up to me within 2 weeks of my daughter being in this new school saying, well, I think your daughter needs to be on some type of medication. And I was just like dumbfounded. I'm like, you're talking to the wrong person. So, but thank God her mother and I. Yeah.
Teachers, stick to what you're specializing in. You're there to teach. But,
you want
to diagnose and it's like they don't understand that family life, it affects children. Whatever's going on, whether they had a death in the family or whatever, people, kids are affected in different ways of whatever's happening.
Well, in the systemic aspect that we live in such a systemic aspect where addiction, is seen all over the place. You and I know that. Look at all the schools that we've gone to and all the kids that we've been in front of. They might not be using, but they're living in an environment where they're surrounded by it. But the thing is, with the systemic aspect of being in these schools, this was when with my daughter and the teacher, they were just implementing, new guidelines on assessing the teachers' ability to teach. So, and then the classroom size was getting larger. So these teachers, basically, are looking to control the classroom. They're looking to control the kids.
Exactly. We talked about doctors. I want to go back to this for a minute. I know with Briona, I remember that she had done a lot of drugs, and the sheriff caught her, and they took her in front of the magistrate, and the magistrate, she was a mess. The magistrate says, "Man, send her to the hospital, make sure she's okay before we send her to the detention center." And here she goes in to an emergency room, and this doctor, she's asking for something to calm her down or something, what's a drug that they use to get them off or get them down?
Suboxone.
Suboxone. She's calling out for Suboxone. Oh, give me some Suboxone, And this doctor, in return, she's just yelling at her. Why should I do anything for you? You're doing this to yourself. And to be honest with you, as a parent, I'm very humiliated, because I feel this is a reflection on me. Because at this point, I think, here's a doctor. They should know better that, my daughter is obviously addicted, and it's not in her hands, but she's telling her, "You're doing this to yourself. Why should I, do anything for you? I got all these sick people." Well, my daughter is sick. It's a different kind of sickness, right?
Yeah, well, and
addiction, it's a brain disease from, this is what I don't understand. You're saying that this is a sickness, but in return, how do we treat these people? We treat them like criminals, And there's not enough.
The stigma and the barrier associated with addiction is I thought we were doing a better job, but they are looked on worse than people with behavioral health issues, with mental health. Addiction is looked on so poorly. And when you look at addiction, okay, what are the symptoms of addiction? To a lot of people, they're moral failings, because they're not physical ailments. Like with other chronic illnesses, addiction is a chronic illness. It's something that it's a progressive brain disease that you're going to have for the rest of your life. So how do you measure that? Like other chronic diseases, like for example with diabetes, you take your blood work, you look where your insulin levels are, and you're able to treat it. Those are hard numbers. Hypertension, you're able to take your blood pressure. Okay, what do you look for with addiction? You're looking for a person that's maybe got a few DUIs, got a few arrests, got some job jeopardy. Well, those are looked on as behavior issues, not as symptoms amongst us. So we're not educated well in understanding addiction, and the symptoms of addiction, and how it progresses and what it looks like. But these are there's so many issues related to addiction, because think of it, me as an addict, relapse doesn't happen when you pick up that bottle and drink for the first, drink or pick up the drug and use it. It happens well before that. And the thing is, with relapse, it's a thinking disease, okay? And it doesn't happen when you pick up that drug or the alcohol. It happens well before that. But we act as our own doctors. There isn't, I don't go to the doctor and we set up a plan of, okay, I'm going to be coming back to you every 3 months, and, we'll be able to assess you. And there isn't anything physically to assess.
Exactly. Well, that's a good point. I want to go to that for a sec. All right. You said we have 20% of people either in recovery or are addicts. Okay. Now, from what I understand, this brain disease, it's something where you just feel inapt. There's something just not all together with you. you don't feel right. You could be the captain of the football team. You can be have the prettiest cheerleader, or you can be tops of your class or whatever. But you just feel like something is not complete with you. That maybe from that first drink or from that drug or whatever, it gives you that euphoria where I guess it just numbs you for where you're not feeling this inaptness or something.
Well, it masks behavior. I mean, if you have anxiety, I know I had low self-esteem growing up, and I was someone that's always seeking attention. So, I mean, it just went hand in hand to use things that mask my feelings, and there are depending on what study you read. I mean, there was a great study I read recently just about the predisposition of behavior of a person and how that plays into if they're going to become, if they have a propensity for addiction or not. But the one big thing with addiction too is that, when I was, first learning about my disease of addiction, we were taught basically that this is a disease and that roughly 80%, depending on what study you read, 80% of it was attributed to genetics. Okay? Well, just in the last less than a decade, things have changed so dramatically within the addiction field with our culture. I mean, look at social media now. Social media plays such a huge part in the way we communicate and the way we actually grow. Okay? That environment now plays almost 80% of. So you might not need to, might not have the genetic predisposition, but if you're growing up in an environment that the potency, that everything's there, because when we talk to these kids, where are they learning about drugs? They're learning about it from each other, from their peers. And and things circulate so much quicker now with social media, social norming. It's ridiculous, and we have to do a better job of having the discussion with them. But this just goes right back to me as a father and our generational forgetting. Well, I'd rather see them drink or smoke marijuana than heroin. Well, it's a drug's a drug's a drug,
Exactly.
and it's a behavioral issue. And that's what we have to understand. I was just talking to a friend of mine in the field, and it was kind of interesting how he brought this up. He goes, look at Adderall usage.
That
Okay?
was another thing too
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on.
Look at Adderall usage. And this is down in the Detroit area. West Bloomfield, Northfield, the affluent areas, man, they got an Adderall problem. Why don't they have an Adderall problem in Hazel Park, some of in Detroit, Highland Park? Why isn't we have so it has to do with the social norming of a certain demographic. I mean, my brother is a administrator in a very affluent community, and I swear to God, there are parents that believe their kid needs to be on Adderall because it relates to better grades. There is not one study that is related.
Yes,
Adderall is nothing more than methamphetamine.
Exactly. That's the whole thing is abuse of drugs isn't necessarily the opiates. Okay, that's what we touched on before. That from cholesterol, this gentleman ended up being on 7 different medications. Because from one drug it led to something else, and another drug leads to something else, and all of a sudden you're on 7 different medications. And guess what? You're on these for life. You can never get off of these. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's opiates, or benzidine, or anything for mental health. 2020 did I remember they did this show, and it was about say maybe 10 years ago, and they were talking about these people that had the mental health issues, and doctors put them on these antidepressants or whatever, and all these people that were coming on the show, they were saying, if they would have told me that I was going to run into this problem, I would have never ever took them. because if you try to get off of them, this one lady was explaining that it's like somebody's drilling into her head, if she didn't take this medication. So that's everything is, you're stuck on there because your body's calling for it, and if you're not getting it from a doctor, you're turned to the streets, and that's where you self-medicate. Okay, and a lot of times they want to tell you, well, yeah, they have bipolar or they're depressed because they're starting to experiment with alcohol, or they got into your.
Well, yeah, I mean, just for example, I mean, every person that comes into treatment, for example, that I deal with, they could easily be diagnosed with depression. Who in the hell wants to come into treatment, right?
Yeah.
It's taken them years to get there. Now they realize they got a problem. Who isn't depressed? But that's situational. But now, if someone isn't, versed and talented enough to understand that, they're walking away with a prescription, But the thing is, it's not. We have to find clarity. They have to find some clarity, and it is tough. I mean, when you've been on these drugs for a period of time, I mean, I just had to deal with a 53-year-old gentleman almost ready to retire from the Postal Service, and I'm just trying to work with him, trying to find that light, just a light that he that can turn on, that he can see something positive in his life. He was in such a dark place. He ended up running out of treatment. I mean, and it's really hard because, someone like that who's struggling for such a long period of time and that feels just so lost, empty, and and only finds relief through these drugs and all the circumstances that surround him, he's not long of this earth, and that's the sad part. But talking about our children and for example, if I could just persuade people to do their own research and study, there is pediatric archives and the federal government's Social Security rolls. If you look from 1987 till today, the number of kids under the age of 18 that are categorized as disabled, mentally disabled, it'll floor you. It didn't exist in 1987. There's well over 1.2 million kids under the age of 18 that are categorized as mentally disabled in this country and receiving Social Security because of it. Now, haven't we developed, medically? We have all these prescriptions. Aren't they supposed to be helping? But then look at the numbers. It's mind blowing.
See, this is what I really don't get. From my understanding is we lose 328 people every day to addiction. That's people that die, okay? I believe it's every 13 minutes or every 19 minutes that we lose somebody to addiction that pass away, okay? And the whole thing is our federal government, we lost one person to Ebola. And oh my gosh, everybody was in an uproar. What do we have? The czar, the president, he appointed a czar. We made all these hospitals, through, the military and stuff that are sitting empty. But 328 people die every day. And it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. It seems like it's getting worse every day. It's not really that there's a slow in process or whatever. We talked once before and we were talking about, 10% or whatever. But it's 10%. But everybody's affected by this disease.
Everybody.
Everybody's
The
affected by disease.
systemic aspect of addiction is everywhere.
Everywhere. And the whole thing is, addiction does not discriminate. Okay? It does not discriminate. That means, you're talking about a postal worker. You're talking about doctors. You're talking about attorneys. You're talking about judges. You're talking about politicians. It affects everybody. everybody. But a lot of times, those people that have the money and stuff, they know how to wash it away where it doesn't come up in the media, so you don't hear about it as much.
Well, we're a very gullible society. I'm sorry, we are a very gullible society, and it's happening right now. This medical marijuana issue is nothing more than it's our state. We're a medical marijuana state. It's nothing but a guise for recreational marijuana. When you look at the average age of someone that has a card, a marijuana card, it's in what their diagnosis was to get that marijuana card. Now you look at the let's see, there's Washington, Colorado, Oregon, and Alaska, along with Washington, D.C., that have recreational use now. And all I can say is be careful what you ask for, because those states, they are just basically guinea pigs for and the people that live in those states of what is happening. This, when you look at the bottom line of what is motivating this, it's all money. It's all money. In those states, like for example, Colorado has 2,700 retailers. 2,700 retailers in the state of Colorado. That's 80 more Starbucks and McDonald's combined. Now, what differentiates 2,700 different retailers? A more potent drug and a ton of marketing. You got Santa Claus slinging dope in Colorado.
Well, you're talking about you were at your doctor's office, and 3 drug reps, walk right in. Now, I know a while ago, these drug companies, they used to take these doctors on these elaborate trips. They give them kickbacks. I think that slowed down a little bit. Is that right?
Oh, it's policed very well.
Okay. That's just the whole thing is. Everything is driven by money. I don't care what it is. We talked about sugar, and how much everything has this sugar in it that they know you're going to end up with diabetes and all these different sicknesses. But almost 80% to 90% of everything in your grocery store, that's what it's all about. Okay? I mean, everything, it's time as a nation, as a people, we need to open up our eyes and see what's happening around us. Because as far as our federal government, they don't give a shit about you. They're being run by big business. That's the people that's putting money in their pockets to get these things passed in front of your noses. Because you and me and all us as a public, we've got our eyes closed until this thing hits us in our own doorsteps. I did not wake up to this shit, or I didn't know what was going on around me till I lost my daughter. That I seen that there's an epidemic going on and people are dying. That really opened up my eyes to what was happening around me. And the whole thing is, with this program, this talk show, and us going into schools and stuff, it's just to better educate our public. Okay, I'm tired of going to these funerals. Man, it's crazy. It's crazy. None of those just the ones you hear about, okay? That people don't want to talk about this. They're embarrassed, okay? I was there. I know, okay? But this is happening all around your neighborhoods. Your neighbors probably to either side of you, okay? If it's not in your doorsteps. And the only way is by us waking up and getting ourselves educated, okay? It's like I work at a farmer's market, and everything is about, things that don't have pesticides and antibiotics and all this, in it. What happened to these people that are supposed to be looking out for us? Why did we get to this far? Look, first, the alcohol, it was, we could not police it. So what happened? We made it legal, okay? Then when MAD came on the scene, from these children dying, from alcohol, all of a sudden it's like, is it really to educate these people or to really help these people? No, it's all about the money. That's what it's all about.
Well, look at alcohol recently. We got powdered alcohol now. We got powdered alcohol. You can smoke alcohol now. You have vape bars. They're called vapor bars. They're big in Europe. They're coming over here to the U.S. You walk in, and yet you're breathing alcohol, and um, it's just amazing. I think sometimes we have a problem as a society in a way because you're told no, and if you step back, okay, it's like your father telling you no. Every time my father told me no, man, I was going to do it no matter what. Now, even strong, because that was my attitude, and I think that had a lot to do with my predisposition for my drug abuse, because of my stupidity, my inability to be humble to knowledge and to someone looking out for me.
But
And
see, the whole thing is, I mean, knowledge is so open and free to us
Sure.
now, with the internet. I mean, all you got to do is, instead of figuring out how to pass a test, so you don't find marijuana or the drugs in your system, what is it doing to you? Yeah, just Google it. What does this do to me?
yeah,
We have, information is so key, and it's right there for us. I tell you, as far as going back to the farmers market, people are coming in, and you can see that they're educating themselves. Hey, I don't want nothing with pesticide. I want something that don't have this in it. And they're looking for healthy way of eating, because guess what? You are what you eat.
yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up because, like, my 13-year-old daughter, she's going to Europe this summer, and I told her, just look for the differences between our culture and what you're going to experience in Europe. Just the food alone. The food it's not preserved. You can't go to a supermarket over in Europe where the shelf life of food is a couple days over in Europe.
Yep.
And it's a reason for that.
Exactly.
And just look at those things, and and I just I'm looking forward to her experiencing that and just gaining a lot of knowledge from that.
My wife, she's from Lebanon, and I never really understood what she meant by, she said, your fruit doesn't have no flavor. Your vegetables, they don't have no flavor. And I didn't really get it.
Yeah.
But everything is picked early, so it stays, and it's got all the preservatives and all this pesticides and everything else, okay? Over there, it grows on the tree. So when you get it, from the grocery store or whatever, it's ripe, it's ready, it's wonderful, and you're getting all your nutrients and everything that you need from your vegetables and your fruit, where you don't really get it here, because everything's like imitation. It looks good. You can't wait to, take a bite. Then it's like you're disappointed.
Yeah.
You're disappointed. And another thing too, every time you open up a can, read all that stuff that's in it. Oh my gosh! Half the stuff you can't even understand what it is.
If you can,
if you can't understand what it is, you think that's good for you?
Yeah.
Hell no. Hell no.
No, it's nuts.
All right. Now, with these drug companies going into the doctor's office, I'm sure doctors understand that there's this big problem going on, don't they?
You wonder.
This
See,
is what I don't understand. I mean, I know the drug companies, they're in for to get paid, but what I don't understand is how come these doctors, they don't make them go back to school and learn about what's happening around us, whether it's addiction or all that, so they know how to treat, instead of just turning their backs and say, oh, you're doing this to yourself,
Well, I mean, God, we would need about 3, 4, 5 hours to talk about this issue, because just a couple of issues related to it. Okay, this Suboxone push or these opiate treatment alternatives, medicated assisted treatment for addiction. Okay, things have changed dramatically in addiction and in the treatment of addiction, and there's a medical component that's there. I mean, it's not going away. It's this is the development of treatment. Okay. For example, recently all the specialty courts in the country, if you get federal funds, like for example for a drug court or an opiate court or a veterans court, if you're getting federal funds, it is a requirement now that you have to offer medically assisted treatment for someone who has been identified with addiction. So now this is pushing an agenda. Okay, this is pushing an agenda.
So what is it? What is it they're pushing? They're pushing
Well,
the
they're-
methadone clinics.
Well,
They're
I mean,
pushing the
Suboxone, Vivitrol, but so I mean, without, this is a whole other topic.
Right.
But okay, so you have this agenda going on. Now let me equate it to what happened recently. Okay, like I tell you, we're doing some good things from a regulatory standpoint. I mean, we just rescheduled Vicodin. A few years back, we changed the formulation of OxyContin because you were able to crush it, you were able to snort it. You could crush it to snort it. You could. It was water soluble, so you could inject it. So what they did is they made it.
Come out with Zohydro.
Well, exactly. That's where I'm going. So we asked the manufacturer, you got to reformulate it so it's tamper resistant. So then what happens? Zohydro comes out, but initially, do you know Zohydro was denied approval, and then they backdoored it. They backdoored it on us because the money was flowing.
Exactly.
And now you have a pill, Zohydro, which is 10 times as potent. It's pure.
Hydrocodone.
Yeah. Well, it's not even because it has no acetaminophen, so it's pure. It's pure, and on top of it, there's no tamper-resistant property to it. It's crazy.
So it's easy to
Try to make
smoke
sense.
or
Snort, inject.
see a lot of times when you don't really follow stuff like this, you would never know. But because this is where our interests are, and we want things to change, we notice these things. And Zohydro, when it came out, it's like get a hold of your congressman, tell him what the hell. No, we want this gone. But we find that in our country, it's about who has the most money, and that's what gets done. It's not really the small man that's going to get anything accomplished. If you got enough money, you can get away with murder, I guess. We see it happen all the time. But that's what it is they're putting money into these politicians that's making these laws or approving these things that's not really good for us. And in the long run, we really don't have any say about it, which is nuts. Please, people, open your eyes, get involved, talk to your children, it's not that I'd rather have you smoke marijuana or drink alcohol. I have a senior, and I try to tell him, listen, I know you're gonna try stuff. You're gonna try the alcohol. As much as I want to say no, okay, or don't. I tell them, listen, if you're doing something like that, okay, make sure you hang on to your drink. You don't you don't put it down anywhere where somebody can put something in it. Listen, where you start feeling good, or that's it. Don't drink anymore. Don't go any more than that. You try to educate these kids, because as a kid, I know. I was there.
Yeah, well, we had to experience it, right?
Exactly.
But the thing is, you don't need to experience to learn. I mean, if
exactly.
but the
see,
thing is,
that's the whole thing.
You talk about your
that's
son.
the whole thing, Scott.
Yeah.
I want you not. But if you're going to, okay, always use your brain, okay?
But your brain is hijacked. That's the thing that they don't understand.
Yeah, don't
You're
follow along. You just always be smarter than the guy next to you. And if you see someone not doing the right thing, you stand up for them.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. But you talk about your son being a senior. He's going to be going off to college, right? Us as a society, you as a father, your son as an individual growing up, their goal is to go to college, right? Mm-hmm. Your goal is to save the money to help him achieve that goal, and that's the way the majority of us in this country, look at our children, and that's how they grow. Well, do you know that over 26% of the kids that go to college meet the criteria for addiction because of the binge drinking and the environment that they're in. Okay, and that's compared to 9% of the general public. So what we're doing, we're saving all this money for these kids to go off to college, but we're breeding addicts. We're breeding addicts. That's what our colleges are doing.
Yeah.
And it's, and I tell you, and I can go story after story of the kids that have gone to college and that have fallen off, or, but, the environment, we need to develop the environment, a safe environment on that college campus. I mean, I haven't even talked about, assault, sexual assault, and colleges aren't the safest environments for our kids.
Exactly. I've been listening about spring break and stuff. You used to see marijuana, you used to see alcohol. Now it's heavy duty heroin, drugs, and guns.
Yeah.
Every time you turn, you turn to, this is what's happening in these places. The world is scary. It's scary in itself, and the whole thing is, I've tried to go into a lot of schools and stuff, and they pretty much shut the doors. Like, we don't have time. We're there to educate, and hopefully we're there to educate these children, to go on past high school and past college, but they don't have an hour to give, the presentation of Chasing the Dragon.
Yeah. Well, it's that. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Can't tell you how many times I've talked to administrators in our school districts, and we don't have a drug problem. The same sentence. It's, we just kicked out about 60 kids last year. So they kicked the can down the road. They don't have the drug problem anymore because they, but that's their ignorance to addressing this issue. And then every time, you as parents and just interested citizens, just watch every fall. Read the papers and see what's happening in your schools, because it's interesting. Once the kids go back to school and they start congregating and spending time, in a more, closed environment, you see things like just a neighboring community. They had 6 kids overdose on synthetic drugs and have to be hospitalized because of it. And that's a whole nother story. But it's that gang type mentality that our peers have, and you see it in our schools. And what was the other thing I wanted? Just when we talk about kids and the goals that they set, and just with the college aspect of that environment that they're going into, we need to provide safe environments for our kids.
Yep.
And that's not only in the school atmosphere, in a family atmosphere, because that'll help. I would hope them to want to educate themselves. Because I just had a valedictorian of a neighboring community come into treatment, and the kid was, he's just a brilliant kid, but he was using all those resources to look for that angle, man.
Well,
he was developing. Oh yeah, he was developing. What I call, he was a kitchen chemist. He was developing these synthetic drugs and using them and selling them, and the big difference between when I was in my addiction and what the kids are experiencing now, and it's just a little over a decade ago, is that I didn't have to worry about life or death. These kids actually have to worry about life or death because of the types of drugs that they're using, the potency, that's what the DEA just came out and did a warning with the heroin that's coming. It's all fentanyl laced. It goes back to what develops a good customer. It's that 80-20. It's the 80-20 rule. 20% are going to of the people are going to dictate 80% of your sales and stuff like that. So with alcohol, and you've seen it. Okay, they're not looking for the guy who drinks a couple beers on the weekend. They're looking for that guy that's drinking every day. Mm-hmm. They want to convert him into a more stable user, to use even more on a daily basis. And it's that 20%, and that's what's happening with the marijuana. The 20% are driving 80% of the business.
Scott, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you,
That's very
Sam.
informative, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Again, this is Briona's legacy, and the whole thing is hopefully that we give you some information, but the big thing with me is I need you to become actively involved. Actively involved, because see, one hand doesn't clap by itself. We need each other so we can make a difference. All right. Thank you very much for listening today. Really appreciate it. Again, this is Briona's legacy. Have a great day.
Thanks.